Welcome back, everybody, for episode 25. And this is actually the return of Cooksey. I know all of you guys were wondering where he was. He had to take a small holiday, and the show must go on. So we had Travis with Moto Aftermath on, but we'll probably have him back on later because everyone really likes his insight on stuff too. And so do I. This show is all about outliers and privateers and just bench racing. And this is a very long introduction. So we've got Chris Cooksey here. We've got the mad scientist, Coach Robb, with nutrition, blood, so much stuff that he does. I always love talking to him. And then we have somebody that I watched grow up from a 50cc. His name is Bronson McClure. He is now turned pro, and he's qualified for a couple nationals, and he's on Rock River Yamaha. So Bronson, how are you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Just enjoying it, taking it all in, and yeah, pumped to be on.
How old are you now?
20.
20, man. See,
Yeah.
I'm becoming an old man.
Yeah, growing up.
So, the first time you really impressed me was pretty much when I was on my way out, and I built that arena cross track, and I had a really gnarly triple in. And when I saw you do the triple in, I was like, oh man, it took me a little while to jump that. And here's this little kid just seat bouncing the hell out of something and didn't really take much time to do it. So I was a little jealous, but also super impressed, my friend.
Yeah, no, that was cool. That track was pretty sweet. That was my first ever time like riding anything like that.
Yeah, that doesn't make me feel any better, but I know the panel would love to hear too. How did you get the Rock River ride?
Yeah, so honestly, like last year before, or I guess it was at Loretta's, I had broken my elbow like a month before Loretta's, and I wasn't doing Loretta's, but I just went there to hang out. And the guy who runs the team now, his name's Bobby. I've known him, for like 2 years, I guess. He's seen me ride, and yeah, I just was kind of talking to him at Loretta's, and he asked what my plans were for this year. And at the time, like, I really was just kind of like, I don't know, I wasn't like over it, but like, I just planned on racing locally, just kind of like, getting a job and just doing it for fun. And he asked me what my plans were, and I told him that, and he goes, well, would you be interested in riding a Yamaha? And I just kind of took it with a grain of salt at the time, just, and I was like, yeah, I'd be interested, we'll keep in touch. And then, yeah, I think I didn't really talk to him for like a few months after that. And then like a month later, I guess after the new year, January, February, he called me again and was like, I'm really serious about this. Like, do you want to come on? And I was like, well, this is like, could be like a once in a lifetime opportunity, so I took it, and yeah, it's been great ever since.
How's the bike over there?
Oh, dude, the bike is killer. Yeah, it's definitely the best bike I've ever rode.
It's crazy what some good support will do for you. So I know you were pretty much the only hometown boy besides, well, I mean, Tomac was out. So you finished 32nd at Thunder Valley, and then you finished 29th at Millville. What other nationals are you planning on doing?
Yeah, so I was supposed to do Washougal, which is this weekend, but the mechanic I had working for me has like, he's not like a full-time mechanic. He works like a real job. So he had some like family stuff going on, so he couldn't go. So I was just like, I'll just not go by myself. And so I think I'm skipping this one, and then I'm going to show back up for the last one in Ironman, which is in, I think, a month. So that's my next outdoor for me. And then in between, probably just going to do some like fair racing and stuff like that. Just hopefully make some money and start doing some arena cross stuff.
Bronson, did you think about doing that PIR race on Thursday night that was last night?
Yeah, if I was going to do Washougal, I was going to do that race. Yeah, for sure.
So that's a fun one, and there's some good money. And I guess Grant Harlan won it last night, but yeah, that one would have been a good one for you.
Yeah, I think it's like a $15,000 pro purse. So there's some decent money with that in the two strokes here at Washougal.
I think PIR pays better than Washougal if you're not in a two stroke.
Yeah, probably.
Purse wise, I think you are completely right, Cooksey, with it being $15,000 because first place probably got right around 6, 7, and then it kind of went from there. Top three makes the most money. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm just speculating a little bit, but I know in the pro motocross stuff, it's like $6,000 to win a moto if you were beating Jet, right?
Yeah.
Bronson, are you where are you based out of right now?
So right now, like during this outdoor stuff, I've been training in Illinois just because it's a little more hot and humid than in Denver, where I'm originally from. So I've been training here for a little bit, but yeah, I'm hoping to go back. I went to Florida this winter, so I'm hoping to go back next winter to keep training.
Perfect. When you were in Florida, where did you train at?
I didn't train like anywhere specific. I just kind of went I just stayed at a buddy's house who lived there, and we just kind of went, back and forth to all kinds of different tracks. We rode Orlando MX, which was pretty good. I was pretty far down south, so there wasn't like a whole lot down there, but Orlando, and then honestly just like a few private tracks that were sandy, which was pretty good practice for me because growing up in Denver, there's like no sand at all. So
yeah, well, I'm right in between Orlando and Daytona Beach, so next time you come up, let's definitely get together.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
Dude,
welcome to Florida.
How was that humidity compared to Colorado? I know it's not exactly humid in Colorado, but man, when I went to Florida, I was like, Jesus.
Oh my God. Yeah, when I was there, like I got there, I think in January, and it wasn't super terrible. Like it was hot, it was just like, but then I left in March, and by the time I was leaving, I was like, man, like I was always soaking wet. Like I just, I just like drenched. You just are drenched the whole time. Like it's not fun, but I mean, you have to do what you got to do.
Oh, full on George Costanza. Like the shower just doesn't take down there. You just stay wet.
Yeah. You get out of the shower, dry off, you walk outside, you're wet.
Well, and I don't think people really take into consideration the constant exposure to the heat. Yes, you can acclimatize yourself a little bit, but then it quickly shifts from being acclimatized to it to then it all of a sudden becomes very, very, very fatiguing. And I think people have a tendency to underestimate how heat exhaustion, being exposed to that every day, especially when you're riding and then trying to cross train in it. I mean, remember the summer that Sexton won DNS at WW Ranch, when he was riding for Geico. It just goes to show you, he's working hard during the week in the Florida heat and humidity and then trying to race in it on the weekend. So I think I've shared with you guys off the record, I've worked with an athlete that's made the Olympics 3 times for triathlon, and he grew up here in Orlando, and he doesn't even live in Central Florida, even though his family's from here, because of that exact reason, that he just can't recover sufficiently in that heat and humidity. So it's interesting when people start to understand this what we call the stacking of heat exhaustion. We're seeing a lot of it even this summer, where guys aren't able to have, Chris, you talked about it with Jet, just being so tired, heat exhaustion, riding in it, cross training in it, trying to recover from it, then race on the weekend, come back and try to resume training. It's nearly impossible. So props to you, Bronson, for surviving the Florida winter.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad I'm not there right now. But yeah, the winter was perfectly fine. I mean, it was still hot, but I mean, I couldn't imagine being there right now and doing what I was doing in January.
Hey,
I'm looking at
Okay.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was say, what about Supercross? Are you going to do Supercross next year, Bronson?
Yeah, so the plan. So I've never rode Supercross. Just like Johnny knows, like there's nowhere to ride in Colorado. Like nobody really has places besides like him and maybe one other dude. So yeah, next year I think the plan is to get my Supercross license. So I'd have to race the future stuff, and then hopefully maybe race some East Coast Supercross towards the end of the year, or do something like that towards the end of the year. But yeah, the plan is to get the Supercross license for sure.
And unfortunately,
Bronson, go ahead, Johnny.
Go for it, Coach. No.
I was just curious, Bronson, do you know what the definitive steps are to getting a Supercross license? I know you mentioned futures, but like right now you've raced some outdoor nationals. What steps do you have to make to get the Supercross license?
Yeah, I think you can honestly race some amateur stuff like Minios and Daytona. I think give you points towards your Supercross license. And then, the future stuff, I think also does it. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't like looked
You're
into
right.
it that
You're right.
much. Yeah. But I think,
Well,
yeah, just those 3 races.
Well, the thing I'm confused about, isn't the futures an invite only, Johnny?
It is. And it makes it difficult. So if you were trying to get your Supercross license, you'd have to go to the off other amateur nationals, like the Carmichael one in Daytona, in order to really probably have a chance, because the futures, you're racing against factory bikes
Yeah.
to try to get it. And most of those kids are already on a team. So those bikes, you know for certain that those kids have practiced the actual Supercross tracks that those teams own. And I'm sure they have like stepping stone tracks as well. And that's why I do think AJ's new place, where he's literally trying to make, hey, here's a beginner, amateur, then professional level stuff. So you don't just have to show up at certain places that they had in California to where, hey, here's my pro card, I want to jump on that Supercross track. Because if you even are somewhat proficient on a motorcycle and you just try to jump directly into a Supercross track and some Supercross triples, you're gonna shit your pants. The whoops are gigantic. Like there is no stepping stone for it, and it's unfortunate. And right now, where the system is, especially with the futures, it's damn near impossible to get a Supercross license unless you're already incredibly proficient at it. I mean, look at what happened last year. You had, even though Deegan, he made some mistakes, but he finished 4th or so, or a little bit, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm probably a little bit wrong, but he got his butt kicked in some of the future races, and then he's won motos now, right?
That's crazy.
It's not fair. It's just plain and simple, not fair. Not that I'm a Democratic, it's not fair.
Well, and the only reason why I'm asking is, over the last couple of years, I've had some top amateurs that wanted to go get their Supercross card, and no exaggeration, the governing body could not tell them how to get a Supercross card. That's why, and I wasn't trying to put Bronson on the spot. It's just, we're told that if you go to a certain amount of amateur races, which a lot of times they're only announced like a week out, you know what I mean? And so they're never really clear on how these guys are supposed to accumulate points. It was a little bit more crystal clear when you had the Arena Cross. What was that called? The
road to Supercross.
Yeah.
Where at least there was a definitive XYZ. You get your card.
I mean, that's where like I was in the era where Faulkner was getting his license, where, you know, Sexton actually lapped me at one of the Arena Crosses getting his. Like that was the traditional way of going about it, which I liked, you know, because Arena Cross is definitely no joke. Usually the whoops are bigger, but you only have like really one rhythm in there and everything's super tight.
Now, Johnny and Chris, haven't you been in communication with the guys that are putting like Robbie over there at the Arena Cross series? Haven't you guys spoken with them?
Johnny, go for it. You talk to him more than I do.
Yeah, it's been a couple months since Arena Cross is.
Was there any?
But we didn't talk anything about potentially hooking up with Supercross for Feld to be able to get your Supercross license. But no, that is a good question. I should probably message them to see if there's anything on that. I know that they are in contact with Supercross, because there was times when they were kind of dictating some of the stuff that they wanted to do. Cause again, they're the big brother, right? They're the cream of the crop when it comes to professional racing.
To me, it just seems to make sense that you would have, like you said, AJ has an A, B, and a C track, get proficient, go try to cut your teeth on an Arena Cross track before you jump into the legitimate to scale Supercross. When we look at the attrition of Supercross this year, it makes you wonder when the top dogs are going to start to realize it's imperative that you keep your supply channel filled. Otherwise, there's not much of a show when 80% of your field is decimated. And that's obviously privateers and, you know, the factory guys. If they didn't learn it this year, I don't know when they will.
And I love what AJ's doing with that. AJ Catanzaro at his places where he's doing advanced. They used to, Joe Olaf had one out at Comp Edge a while ago, and it was so fun because you could go ride a Supercross track where like the triple was filled in a little bit. So it had the steep ramp, so you could really get used to it. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I don't know why more places don't do that. I don't know if it's too hard or not profitable or what, but I love those type of tracks.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's so damn expensive to keep a Supercross track profitable. You think about it. I don't know the exact figures nowadays, but when I was at the goat farm, Mark Barnett came out and built our 2 Supercross tracks for Dunge and Amart. And the numbers, 15, 20, $25,000 to build a Supercross track at the time. And most people go, man, that's a lot of money. It is, but the most expensive part is the upkeep. You get a good rainstorm in Florida, half your jumps are sitting down at the bottom of the straightaway. You've got water ruts that are 3 feet deep. The wind, let's say the sun and the wind bakes the track, and then your top 3 inches of clay is now sitting in the trees a quarter mile away. The repeat of trying to get it, you got to truck in more clay, you got to rebuild it, you got to repack it. No matter, as the old saying goes, by mid-morning, that track is baked, no matter how much water you put on it early in the day, especially if you've got 3 or 4 fast guys on it. That thing gets torn to shreds. The upkeep and the maintenance. And I like AJ, I like everything that he's doing, but I think that's going to be the big no pun intended, $1 million question is the upkeep of 3 Supercross tracks. I don't care if it's a BMX track, arena cross track, and Supercross. That's going to be interesting to see how that business plan is set up, because as all 3
Well,
of
he's
you
going to
know,
have to hire a full-time track crew. That's just
it's not
no
so much the
getting around
crew;
it.
it's the cost. Well, I guess being in Cairo, he might have a thread of clay on property, because that's where your expense is trucking in that clay. But you guys know, especially Chris being from the West Coast, out there in California, how many tracks have had an ancillary Supercross track, and you had to show a pro card, and that in California couldn't make it work. So it just makes me wonder what the cash flow model looks like. But man, I'll do everything I can to support them, because I want to see AJ's model work. It's imperative that it works.
Well, and what happened to coaches, even though that track was mellowed down at Comp Edge, you'd have 50 guys on the main track and 2 guys on that track. And it just wasn't business profitable.
Well, and it goes back to, like Johnny said, if you go from an outdoor track and then you go to a Supercross track, I had Johnny's scenario was exactly how it played out. The guy got his Supercross card, very first day at Comp Edge, over jumped and broke both of his wrists, very first jump, because of that depth perception, stiff suspension, angle of the face of the jumps. These guys on TV make it look so damn easy. And, a lot of people don't realize it, because I get asked this quite a bit when I do performance camps around the world. Because when we do a performance camp, the rule is, even if it's your local track, you have to keep wheels on the ground for the first 2 laps, just for safety reasons. And they're like, well, then why do they send the finish line jump at Supercross? And people don't realize those are built to scale. You hit that in the 3rd gear, half throttle. So yeah, they'll come out of the corner and just send it. But there's more to the story than just saying that they're sending it on their first lap, not knowing if it's 100 yards, 80 yards, 150 yards. So,
well, Chad Reed has been documented saying, or quoted, that he had his tracks always more difficult than what he would show up on Saturday for, just so that, he wasn't scared or wasn't going to show anything different. But to a privateer, it's pretty much the exact opposite. You show up and you're like, oh my God, this stuff is huge. I'm way out of my element. So then it just shows even more of a discrepancy, not in so much with talent, because again, there's something difference between talent and just sheer experience. And I'm not saying that the top guys don't have talent, because they are the cream of the crop. I'm saying that in the depth of the field, if given enough time to adapt, and that whole 10,000 hour rule to be proficient at something, we would see a more in-depth field. And then the bikes obviously make a huge difference as well. And that's why it'd be nice to see even what Loretta is happening here in about a week, to see if they also did like a Supercross type amateur national, not just the motocross, right, during the same time, to help get some of the points. Because I believe if you qualify just for the pro sport classes at Loretta, you instantly are given a Supercross license. Well, if you did the same thing for finishing top 10 or something at the amateur Supercross event there, I feel like that should be a ticket to get your license as well.
Well, you bring up a really good point, Johnny. When I was working with Kyle Chisholm, we were teammates with Stewart on Sam Manuel Yamaha. You're talking about setting the track up like Chad's doing, setting the track up to be more difficult than when you race it. The whoops that James had at his track If you took a 250 and you put it in between the whoops, you could barely see the bars. That's how deep those whoops were. So to your point, when you're able to blitz those things 3-4 days a week, and then no matter what they make on Saturday night, they are never going to be as big as what James had set up. And to watch him come out of a corner, click a gear, Johnny, on your video, I thought it was cool when you caught that one where Jet was double shifting in the air and then approaching that next one, to get into the lower RPMs to get that torque curve up so that you can lighten that front end and tap the front. To watch James do it is like poetry in motion. And I've been to a lot of Supercross tracks, and my butt puckered like I've never before. Those things were ridiculously big. So is there any wonder why James or Chad or, Tomac, they build those things to be at home so big that the average person couldn't even begin to get through them, and then make Saturday night seem like a cakewalk for sure.
Might have lost Bronson here. I just see a black screen from him. We got some spotlight for him earlier on, but I was interested about his take on the whole.
Hey Johnny, can we talk about your triathlon experience? Because I don't think a lot of people they see that, maybe they skip the video. I just want to give you props, man. You got flat tires, illness, you swam the wrong direction. The fact that you finished it, I'm literally more proud of you than if you'd probably won it, because it was funny. I was telling my daughter this story. I was like, yeah, first he swam the wrong direction, and then he got a flat tire, and then he got another flat tire. She's like, I would have been so embarrassed. I just would have went home. I'm like, no, Johnny didn't quit. I was pumped. So good on you, Johnny.
Awesome job.
Hey, you guys are literally like family on me. You guys know it's not a woe's me type of a story. It's more of a just everyone goes through shit, and it's not how you bear it. It's not what you bear. It's how you bear it. Right. And truthfully, the competitor in me was like, hey, I didn't get close to professional racing because A, I was fucking out of money, and B, I had some major family issues, and then C, I just was hurt, so it was just that I really feel for like Trey Kennard because his story resonates with me because of how incredibly talented that SOB it was and still is, but he really didn't get the perfect opportunity to show his worth because of how many times he was injured. And I'm not trying to make the analogy that I was ever on par with that individual. However, I missed a lot of opportunity because I spent right around a decade being hurt. And it was just unfortunate with some other circumstances. So just kind of fast forwarding to the whole, I wanted to do something that honestly, I was very depressed after the whole thing. And you can see in my fucking videos and shit that I was like, hey, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. And I was trying to kind of show everybody, hey, how do we fix the sport? Because this is all wrong. And I ended up funneling my anger through literature and kind of end up talking with therapists, blah, 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 blah. I don't even know why I'm going all into this, Cooksey, but anyway.
Hey, Bronson's trying to get back in.
You release some dopamine and serotonin into the brain. It's not optional, it's essential. And we live in the 21st century where we sit in front of Netflix and we don't fucking do anything, right? And anybody that's in this chat room right now, there is a screw loose to them because they like motorcycles. And the thing that blew my mind that took me forever to figure out was why we get over our leg over a motorcycle is not necessarily because it's fun, but because if you're not 1000% focused, you're going to get hurt. And so your body goes into a state of being in the zone to where nothing else matters, regardless of if you're having money problems, relationship problems, whatever, it all goes away. And that is what's so addicting about this deal. And when that is taken away from you, Cooksey, you know it. You've got some very close friends. We talk about a lot of guys like Tyler Evans. There's so many that we can name that once they quit racing, they have their selves, their inner voice is they're lost. They're just simply lost. And sometimes they end up making really bad decisions. And we see a lot of guys like Nico Izzy and so many others that get addicted to pain medication or harder drugs because of when you lose this adrenaline, you go look for it somewhere else. And anyway,
Johnny,
go
can
for it,
I
Coach.
add something? I want to add something to what you're saying, and you're not going to like me for saying this, but please forgive me up front. I hope the chat room will take the time to go back and watch your early videos. I hope the chat room will go back and listen to your interview on Gypsy Tales. Because when you mention how you resonate with Trey Kennard, and again, this is going to be a hard statement for you to hear me say, but both of you lost your fathers through motocross. And, you know, if people aren't aware of it, Trey Kennard's dad got killed. He was grooming Trey's track. The tractor rolled over and he died. Your father passed away when you were in the prime of your career. Yes, you were going through injuries and shit like that. But so I hope that people, as much as you like to joke and be lighthearted with stuff, when you make a comment that Trey Kennard resonates with you, it is at it's so much deeper than just saying, hey, you both were talented on a dirt bike. I know you're not saying you were on par with them. That's not what you're insinuating, but you were good. You were fast. You got injured a lot. And when you draw a parallel to somebody that most everybody can resonate with, because we saw him on TV, we saw him, riding for various teams. We all love his goon riding videos. You get down below the surface of all the fun and the jovialness that goes with it. There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of pain. And so please, I hope that anyone who may hear you say that and go, wow, that's a little bit out of context. It's really not. I would encourage you to go listen to Gypsy Tales podcast where Johnny was interviewed, where he bore his soul. And like he said, his early videos was a lot of hurt and a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. And I hope people will look at that as that was your positive outlet to either shed light on something or, like you always say, trying to create a catalyst for change. It got perceived by a lot of people who didn't like the message because they had to own it, that for you to be able to shed light on things that needed to change wasn't about pointing fingers. It was nothing more than the desire to make the sport better. So huge bear hug to you, Johnny. I know it's been a hell of a journey, especially with you and your dad. And I'm sure Trey would resonate with it as well, brother.
And again, I've said this before. I'm an overshare, which is honestly it's one of my greatest traits, but also one of my worst faults as well. And the underlying context of all my previous videos was just, yes, there was things that were wrong that need to be changed. However, my view on life, and especially having a kid, has changed so dramatically where the world is so much bigger than just this small bubble of motorcycle racing. And we get so caught up with motorcycle racing that sometimes we lose the bigger outlook. And that's part of becoming an adult and whatnot. And so my whole goal for this channel, and thank you so much guys for being on this podcast and helping me become a better human being, is how do we prevent other people from making our same mistakes? And how do we give back to where, again, there's that quote that a rising tide lifts all boats. Just because we weren't able to make it, or how can we help some other people through not making the same mistakes? And that's why it's so cool to see Bronson come through and start trying to make a living at this, because if I had to do it again, I wouldn't, because of all the pain and everything there. But my story is not the same as everyone else. We are dictated and molded by our experiences. And so Bronson, it looks like you have returned to the chat room. And anyway, it was just talking about my triathlon deal that ended up being a complete shit show, but we finished it. And yes, Coach, I have not quit. Next week, I'm still doing your program. And my head, again, I just need the whole expectations things. You need to adjust your expectations per stuff, because at the end of the day, right, there's that saying where when you get knocked down, you're going to get back up and you're going to be better than before. And if you break a bone, usually it grows back stronger. Well, you know what? There are times when you get knocked down enough that you physically can't get back up, right? But you can do your best. And so the whole goal is to just do your best and not compare yourself, because comparison is the theft of joy. That's just plain and simple. As soon as we start comparing ourselves to others, we lose enjoyment from it, because you have not lived in somebody else's shoes. You do not know what pain and suffering that they've gone through, or what they've had to did they have it easy or did they have it hard? You don't fucking know. So it is literally a waste of space and air to even compare. So anyway, I'm still doing the Ironman. We're going to finish. I'm going to panic in the water. That's all there is.
Remember what we talked about, though. The problem with triathlon is you have 4 egos. You have a swim ego, a bike, and a run ego, and then a transition ego. That's why I warned you, your ego will get beat to shit like Mike Tyson's got a hold of you, because it's not like, nothing against moto, but it's a single sport, right? We go out and we have to deal with the heat and humidity for 230s plus 2 in Bronson's case. For you, you have a sick child at home. Your child got your wife sick. You're staying at a hotel, 4 hours of sleep. You got to get there. You're trying to figure out how to put on the damn wetsuit, trying to figure out how to swim straight. The bad news is you become proficient as a swimmer. So when you don't sight, you find yourself 400 meters off course, just like that. Well, there's your first dent to your ego, because you look up and you're like, uh-oh, I'm off course. And you finally get out of the water and you give everybody the big, heads, arms up there, which was awesome. Paige killed it there.
Oh,
And then
I
you
was
take on
definitely in last place. And you told me not to go fast. And when I was looking at my Garmin, I was swimming at a 112 pace for the first 200 meters. And my heart was the highest in the water, but I was also panicking. But
yeah,
no.
but also got to keep in mind, I want to set the context for everybody. What did I say that you're capable of swimming per 100 with a wetsuit? I said you can swim a 130 all day long. You're like, there's no way, I'm a 150, and you're out there at 112. So I'm going to drop the microphone and walk out of the room. You're faster than you give yourself credit for. But your triple ego, swim, bike, run plus transition, it took a hell of a beating. And I warned you that would happen, only because we're so used to a one sport ego. Triathlon's a completely different animal because you have a 3-sport discipline. You don't have to be good at any of them. You have to just be average at all 3 of them. And that's what makes a good triathlete. The stuff that you dealt with had nothing to do with fitness, flat tires and all the other stuff. So I agree with Chris, man. You pulled yourself up, and it's unbelievable. It's very commendable.
Cooksey, you opened
like
up
you said, you got quit
silly
10 times
here.
Sorry,
we could talk
sorry.
more about my novice vet stuff.
Well, how about open water swim starts? That first buoy's like a fist fight. Holy moly.
It was definitely a different experience for sure. Bronson, I'm gonna give you a loaded question here, and you could leave the chat if you don't want to answer. It's totally okay.
No, you can't. No, you can't. Just be open, Bronson.
Yeah,
that's the way we're
he can
supposed
plead
to.
the fifth, guys. He can plead the
Let's
fifth.
hear it.
I'll answer for him if that's the case. So
Loretta Lynn, is the big boys, are they bringing factory cheater bikes? And they just know that everyone is scared to protest them because of the scarcity principle on what they did last year. Or did they learn their lesson and they're trying to bring more amateur level bikes?
I don't know, that whole topic situation, that to me, I don't know, it's hard to say, in some ways you want to say yeah, but in some ways, you want to say no. I don't know. I think obviously the guys who are on teams, Factory, Yamaha, KTM, Husqvarna, Honda, Cowie, all those bikes are going to be, better than everybody else's. But are they a factory motor? I don't know. It's hard to say, but I definitely think their bikes are probably a lot better than everybody else's.
Johnny,
Go ahead, Chris. Excuse me.
As long as there's racers, they're going to push the rules. That's what I do. That's what you do. That's what we all do.
And the word I was going to bring up, Chris, was what we don't know. And we need to get the rule book from last year and get the rule book from this year and see how the rules, because remember, they're only suggestions, as Johnny, you say all the time. It would be very curious to see what and how the rules have been manipulated, because I'm not a gambling guy, but I would bet you $100 that there's going to be some level of adjustment where somebody can't go in and do exactly what was done last year after all of the hoopla and all of the cover up that MX Sports did and all the dodging and because from what we've heard, based on what the outcome was, didn't he end up getting 2 star motors and he got a chance to test ride the bike for YouTube? He never really
got a test ride anything, but he did get the motors. But the biggest thing was he lost his ride is the thing.
Yeah, but he didn't even get the bike that he claimed. That's what we're trying to get across.
No, because he dropped the charges, right?
Well, he was intimidated to drop the charges. That's what I'm saying. If you step back,
Allegedly, yes.
Allegedly, right. So somebody is going to, if it was done legitimately, I'm going to take the rule book and I'm going to show you the rule book and I'm applying the rule book. You are obligated to give me that bike. If not, you take that to a court of law. There's not a court of law that he would not have won. So if he really wanted that bike for all the reasons that he said, not to be vindictive or anything else, the rules are the rules. And if he had applied it and he took it to legal extent, he should have that bike, not two motors that were given to him as an ultimatum or as an alternative, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? Concessions. He should have Deegan's bike, straight up, no questions asked, end of conversation. But it didn't happen for whatever reason. How do you think the rules have been adjusted this year to ensure that situation doesn't arise in any capacity?
I don't know, but the whole claiming rule is to try to prevent people from bringing, $70,000 bikes in there. But no, if I'm being
what it was intended for or
and,
what actually came about is two different issues, Johnny.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I'm for the sport and I think it's a strong rule because it is for the beneficial of everybody.
Absolutely.
That you're not bringing something that's crazy because again, it's unfair, but we already know that it's unfair. However, what was supposed to happen, what actually happened are two very different things. And if I'm reading in between the lines and I'm speculating a little bit, I kind of feel like there was a strong arm that took place to prevent certain stuff from being in other people's hands. And so if anything, like
but Johnny,
I think people would be scared to do it again.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you just made a comment that's very important. You said the rule was put into place to keep from happening exactly what happened. And then when it happened and got exposed, the rule got twisted, covered up, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. See, that's where I'm kind of confused at it. You put the rule in place to keep from exactly what got exposed from happening. And Johnny, you remember this better than I do. Whose bike was it? It was a Team Green bike that was for sale 3 weeks later after the whole ClaimGate situation for like $50,000.
Wasn't it Ryder D's?
Yeah, it was one of the Cowie bikes. Yeah. So, okay, the rule exposed the ClaimGate situation and all the cover up that went with that.
Bronson, were you at Loretta last year?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, I was there for that.
What was the consensus being there? Was everyone like, oh, what's going on?
Yeah, like it was like a lot of like, it was like, you know how it is, like, oh, that's the kid who protested Deegan, F that kid. And then there's other people like, yeah, that kid's a rock star. Like nobody else had the balls to do that. And it was just, it's just a mess. And then, yeah, I don't know. I think they were, I don't know if it was a factory. I mean, I don't know if it was a factory bike. But I think there was things in there, maybe ECU setting or something, that they didn't want to get out, and that's just kind of how it went. And I think there was for sure a strong arm on why the kid didn't get, what was he supposed to get? That's why they, wanted him to give him, 2 brand new stock motors and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, yeah, a rule's a rule. I mean, if that's the rule, then that's what has to happen. Like, you should know that going in. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, nobody really thinks that their bike's going to get claimed, but I mean, it can happen at any time. So you kind of have to, go hand in hand on what you're going to do.
So they did change the rule. And the biggest thing that I can find is now, if you wanted to claim something, it is now 2 times the manufacturer's suggested retail value. So pretty much, let's just say you have a Rockstar, whatever, factory edition, Honda, or whatever, you name it, right? $12,000. So it's going to be $24,000 that you have to put up to get this bike. So for that reason, that kind of right there is a big entry to the deal. So if I'm speculating, I'm going to say, hey, factories are still bringing some unobtainium shit because they know somebody has to pony up a shit ton of money to take that bike that is worth $70,000. So we're going to risk it. We're absolutely going to risk it, but the rule is still there. And we did get a super chat from Luke that says, what are Cooksey's thought on David Villeman? He seems pretty blunt and says what he wants to see. We'll get back to that. Cooksey, I'll have you answer that. But what
John,
are you guys'
think about it? You're
on...
in But Johnny, you're in the investment world, right? I don't know about you, but if you've got a Team Green bike a couple of weeks later that sells for, Chris, do you remember what the price was? Wasn't it like 45 or 50 grand?
It was a lot more than double. And I'll tell you what, double, I'm still claiming somebody's bike this year if I need one for the year.
That's exactly
But
my
again,
point,
the rule
Chris.
states that in order for you to claim it, you have to be in that class.
Yeah,
So you can't just be a bystander, like I couldn't just show up there and sell a Bitcoin and be like, hey, I want this bike.
Yeah, but Johnny, you've got 42 guys that you could walk over and say, here's $25,000, go claim that bike. I mean, that's a no brainer. I'll give you $5,000 if you help me claim the bike. I'm going to get a $50,000 to $75,000 bike for 25 grand. The shit's going to hit the fan if that's the only adjustment you saw in the rule change.
I mean,
there's got some other
on air,
stipulations.
I could definitely do some more digging, but yeah, that's what I'm showing as of right now.
But here's what's interesting for the people that think we're always out on a witch hunt. Isn't it interesting that the rules have been edited based off of that whole situation? I just once again,
Coach, to be fair, that number was really low before, and I
Agreed.
think that's actually I do believe at least double the retail price is more realistic when you figure suspension, motor, and what normal people do. I think it's reasonable. I'm okay with it.
I agree.
I mean, we're speculating a little bit that
I agree, but like Bronson said, when you rolled into Loretta's, the rules are the rules. And when the rules are used against you, yeah, it hurts, right? If Bronson cuts the second corner of the track every lap and he gets docked, he can't be pissed. He cut the track, right? I mean, the rules are the rules. So here, this guy, whether somebody in the chat room said his sponsor didn't know he was going to do it, I don't think it's a sponsor's. He doesn't owe the sponsor an obligation or an explanation. He just executed a rule that has been in place and it's part of the rule book. But like Bronson said, he was the first guy to have the balls big enough to do it. That's the only difference.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people, I don't even know how many people knew about the rule because I had no idea that even existed until he did that. So I mean,
yeah, the first time I ever was involved in the whole claiming thing is I was at Ponca, and it was, I think, Mike Alessi, he ended up bringing a big bore 85 and his bike got claimed because, he lapped me. Let's just say that. But what I've learned over the years is if you have the ability to cheat, life is so short that you need to just fucking cheat to try to make.
I agree, Johnny. I'm with you. And I've cheated before and I would cheat again if I'm racing.
Well, you saw the interview that Kiefer was doing with Gypsy Tales, and Gypsy Tales even showed the video where he was running a 170 or something in the what was it, Chris? He was running a 170 in the 125 class or something.
I don't know, but I'll go back to the super chat. I don't want to forget that because David Villeman sitting up in the stands, he goes, "Hey, big board." Kiefer's like, "What?" He noticed of all the people, Kiefer, like Villeman knows his crap. I love Villeman. He essentially called out a lot of things, and I don't know. I guess he was on the Pulp show the other night, essentially regurgitating the same thing I've said about Ricky and what an asshole he is. I love Villeman. So there you go, Luke.
But as we always say, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Like Villeman is sitting there getting beat on a factory bike. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to go, what are the statistical chances that a privateer is going to hold shot a factory bike? And then
Villeman is a good example of, sorry, Coach, I interrupted you. So here, I'll finish what I say after you say what you're going to say. I'm going to put myself in timeout for a second.
No, just the idea that when we speculate about something that seems a little bit obvious or the way the behaviors are modified, the three of us get ostracized as being on a witch hunt instead of just asking the question, does it seriously seem realistic? Whether it's lapping up to second place, going undefeated for 3 seasons, does that really seem realistic? When you look at the depth of field, he's not racing against me. So if it seems too good to be true, it is. And like you said, Chris, Villeman in the chat room, when Villeman just calls him out, hey, Mr. Big Bore, and then what did Kiefer said? His butt puckered. He's like, oh, shit, he's figured me out, right? And so what did he do? He changed his motor because he knew he was going to get called out for it. Your point, Chris, is he's not afraid to voice, not because he's a spoiled factory guy. He just looks at it and goes, there's no way.
No,
Go ahead, Johnny, I'm sorry.
But okay, well, what I was trying to say before I say anything about Villeman, but like Deegan, he also got caught cheating, having a big bore in the 50 class way long ago, I think at like Whitney. Okay. So like I'm not we're speculating a little bit, but I'm just saying that this stuff has been it's been normalized for a long time. And it's just been something to where you just don't speak about it. Like there's been so many times, we probably all know somebody that shows up with a 250, actually a 350, but puts 250 stickers on it and nobody says anything, right? But Villeman is a good example of, you guys all remember The Reality of Speed. I love that show as a kid. I was like 10 years old. However, I digress. He was right up there racing for the Supercross wins in the championship on factory Yamaha. And then he ended up onto the Buku bike. And all of a sudden he went from winning to being like 10th place. And it's not like his work ethic changed. You know, we know he was just very talented, so he could get away with a lot, because that, if anything, that Buku series made it look like, hey, this guy is just, he relies a lot on his talent, because he's not out there just pounding out laps just to pound out laps. And I love Villeman. We've had some words on the internet at times, which,
dude, I talked to him at one of the Supercross races about one of his guys, and I was asking him the question. He was so brutally honest. I forget what he called one of his guys an idiot. And meanwhile, I just told him I'm writing for this art, and he literally called his own guy an idiot. I filtered most of it out, but I was like, man, this guy's awesome.
he's not working with Fernandez anymore, is he?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think he is. Okay. So we've talked a lot about Loretta, and the consensus is that
Hold on, one more thing. There's a guy, Colton. He said the last video I did was an overreaction, because I called it the Loretta Lynn's lie. The sense that there's this pot of gold on turning pro and this money and this glory, when in reality, Bronson, once you turn pro, nothing changes except for you have stiffer competition. Like the purse money is laughable. Like you can't make a living off of it.
The purse money this year is a lot better than last year. But I mean, if you were a guy, who is older, who has a house, and you can't make a living off of racing pro unless you have outside sponsors, that give you, that pay for your stuff or give you X amount for getting top 20 or top 10, like it's just not realistic to make a living off of it. Like for me, I haven't done a lot of nationals this year, but if I did, and I'm just doing average, not doing great, not doing terrible, making, $500, $600, $700 a weekend, I can get by on that, but if you were older, in Johnny's position, has a wife and a kid, you can't make a living.
Just throw me under the bus.
But think about this, Bronson, when you went to Loretta's, that's the dream though, right? That's the dream. You're building something towards that. And then if you actually had to go to the races and didn't have a sponsor to cover your bike, entry fee, tires, that's $700, you're in the negative.
Yeah, I definitely, going to Loretta's is cool. Like to go there, like if you've never been, that's the place to go. That's the place you want to go one time. Every other year, it's just the first time's always the best, right? So it's like you go there the first time, it's awesome. You go there the second time, it's still cool, but it's like, And the third time, fourth time, just slowly downgrades. And then, like even me, like if I didn't have sponsors helping me with bikes, gear, parts, gas money, I would not be doing this. I would have been done a long, long time ago.
Yeah. And I wasn't trying to, go ahead, coach.
No, go ahead. Finish your thoughts, Chief.
I wasn't trying to belittle Loretta Lynn's as an event. I think it's an awesome event. I had a blast there. My whole point is go there with your family, enjoy yourself. And, don't go there with the sole purpose of becoming Ricky Carmichael, because out of all those people, the chances of that are very slim. Take what you learn, or get your life lessons, and move on.
Cooksey, here, let me start something with you.
Start it. Get me fired up, Hopper.
Okay.
Oh no.
So if the system is essentially working for the masses, like even nonprofits, a lot of nonprofits, when you go to donate, roundup, whatever, they can take up to like 99% of the donations and still say that, hey, they're donating as a nonprofit. And that's just the business model. It's kind of maybe considered a little bit of fraud, etc., a little wool over your eyes, whatever you want to, whatever analogy you want to use. But is it really the promoters and the sanctioning bodies to change something if they have a line out the door of willing participants? Like, it's up to the masses. It's up to the people that are signing up to say, hey, we won't accept this anymore. And until something like that happens, nothing is going to change. As like, that's capitalism. Absolutely capitalism.
Johnny,
And
I'm going to cut you off because I would agree with you unless you build the largest media outlet to control that narrative and silence anyone who speaks of it. And that's what's happened.
But you have to add another dynamic to it, Chris. Johnny, if you decide you've got a little one that's racing and you decide, let's say your son's Bronson, and you guys decide, all right, we don't think that Loretta's is all it's cracked up to be, to Chris's point. Where are you going to go? If you go to GNCC, MX Sports owns GNCC. If you're going to go to any other form of two-wheel racing, with the exception of flat track, you're just moving your money from one side of the fence to the other side of the fence. And then if you get to where Bronson's at and you go professional, well, now you're still in that same network of the family. The point being is, you know how it is. If you rub somebody the wrong way, you can get blackballed in this sport in 24 hours. We saw it with Claim.
That's what happened to the Claim rule with Brennan, right? That's a prime example. The
prime example. But you take that one step further when you're controlling the narrative. And then once you get all of the casting net around the sport, and I'm talking off-road racing, motocross, right? So now what happens is, okay, I need you, an OEM, to do this for me. And if you don't, you're going to lose GNCC and amateur racing. They're doing the same thing with the tracks. Why did they add another layer called the areas? It's a cash grab. You have people that literally pay money, don't even show up for the race so that they can punch their card through. It's just a cash grab. And what people don't realize is it's also another way for the promoter to put another set of handcuffs. So if the four of us own a racetrack and we commit to becoming an area race, and then we want to put on another series, we can't do it without the permission of the promoter. So it keeps other race series from being able to start to flourish underneath that umbrella because they put their thumb on it. And then there's yet one other caveat. Johnny, you mentioned the promoters and the governing body as if they're two separate entities, but they're actually one and the same. We have no other sport that I'm aware of, and you guys are into UFC fighting, I'm not. Does UFC manage and do they put on their own events? My understanding is they do not.
They put on their own events, but they are regulated by a government organization in every area. And when they go to places that they're not regulated by the government, they take the Nevada State Athletic Commission.
So you take the claim gate that we just spent 20 minutes speaking about. You have a governing body that's supposed to make the rules and enforce the rules, going up against a promoter and an event, trying to implement the law that somebody legitimately leveraged their right to protest or claim. And it got completely obliterated by both the promoters. We saw what the staff of the promoter group did. There's all kinds. Chris, you did a great documentation on what was said, who was in the room, what was said, etc. And what was the outcome of it? Not what the rule book says was supposed to happen. So the rules got changed on the fly by the promoter that is also the governing body, who at will changes the rules.
So I will not disagree that, yes, there is some loopholes in this whole thing that you could say were built in, or they're just
Johnny.
My point is okay, what do we do? What do we do as influencers, as content creators? You can make people aware, but at the end of the day, how to fix this problem is competition. And what is Arena Cross doing? What is World Supercross doing? They're trying things differently. So what you can do is money talks and it walks, I think is the terminology, is if you disagree with what is happening with AMA motocross or whatever, you can start going somewhere else. However, that stuff is not as big as we have as far as Loretta Lynn and then AMA Supercross yet. So you're risking a lot because they control everything. And so therefore they're going to dictate kind of where you spend your money right now. And so,
yeah, but Johnny, think about this, the arena, you just said it earlier, that the Arena Cross almost has to ask for permission to do anything. I don't know to what extent, that's not what you're insinuating, but there is communication, right? They try to work with Feld. If the four of us,
I think it's more of an issue of there's people that have the higher ground, and therefore
Yes.
it's plain and simple, right? They
you're
still can
missing
do
my-
whatever they want, but
you're missing my point. An arena cross goes and rents a venue, whatever size venue, arena cross venue, whatever the hell they can get a stadium. That's not what I'm trying to say. You're
Bronson,
going
tune
to
in, say whatever you want to say. If you want to interrupt, be a dickhead if you need to be. This all show is all about being a dickhead. And so, Coach, I apologize for being a dickhead. I just was reminded Bronson that it's acceptable here.
But you're bringing up a really good point, though, Johnny. If we don't want to bitch about it, we want to try to solve the problem, right? There's a difference between talking about amateur motocross, where we have to have a piece of dirt, we have to be a facility trying to compete against. If we don't have an area, we're not going to get the traffic to our location. So that's where this stacks on top of itself. If you go out as far as you can possibly go, you have a certain amount of tracks that get an area status. It is sold as, once you become an area, the money you're paying us, because I think people realize when our track gets designated as an area race or a regional for that matter, a percentage of that race entry goes back to the promoter. So they're throwing a huge casting net on, all right, now we've put the handcuffs on our track. And another promoter comes along and says, we want to do things differently. Well, that contract stipulates that we have to go ask for permission. So you're saying, how do we change it? Competition, right? Competition improves quality and it decreases prices. Well, we won't be able to become engaged with another series if we agree to the areas, and we can't have an event outside of an area event that's owned by the same promoter, and you have to go through the pecking order. You'll never
Rob,
get a
what do you
regional
think of the whole PGA Tour Saudi deal, where the PGA Tour, they tried to fight, get these people out of business, whatever, and then now they're literally joining forces with the series?
Well, that's what you're seeing with Feld and MX Sports right now. You're already seeing it. Because like Bronson said, all of a sudden this newfound money makes it actually lucrative to go racing this year, where it would have been not a half of that. I don't know how much more they added. What they say?
It was $10 million.
Yeah,
$10 million into the purse. Yeah. A good portion of it, I think $3 million, was from MX Sports. I think was it anyway, I think Peacock ended up putting like 7 to it, and then it was divvied up between Feld and MX.
And then the first thing that MX Sports did was start raising the fees to the tracks to have an event, which you guys have already exposed.
I mean, but guys, inflation, like gas is expensive, milk is
they passed the cost onto the tracks to start to offset that money loss. Right now, I don't have a son that races, but I have 27 riders on our elite team that qualified for Loretta's this year. Only 7 of them are going. And the reason being is because it's cost prohibitive. For me to go and park a motorhome and go support my team, it's going to cost me over $2,000 for the week for me just to sit with a motorhome and support my athletes. $2,000.
Bronson, what did it cost, for you to go to Loretta last year? I will say it cost me in 2009. It was one of the most expensive races I've ever gone to. I spent close to $4,000 as far as parts and et cetera to get down there, to get my ass kicked and finish like 29th and 36th.
Yeah, I think, I didn't go last year I was hurt, so I just went there to spectate, so I didn't really spend anything, maybe, a couple bucks on some ice cream. But the years I did go, I was talking to my dad about this, like, a few months ago, like, dude, I think we spent, $5,000 or $6,000, including, that's in gas, that's just getting there after the regional, that's gas getting their food, making sure you have race gas, tear offs, everything adds up, if you need new gear, boots, and it sucks. Like MX Sports definitely makes it hard, to go race. Like I did a few areas and some regionals this year for Loretta's just to do them. And you had to sign up online, and it was like, $400. And then you get to the track and you have to pay another $400. And I haven't been to Loretta's in, a few years. And I was like, man, like what happened? Like I spent $800 and I haven't even rode yet. and I asked the lady and I was like, well, I already signed up. And she's like, no, you didn't. That went to MX Sports. Now you're paying the track. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, so it's like,
well, you're backed up now because you're there. So
well, and then add to this, because I experienced what Bronson did. I tried to take my son up to Mini O's on Monday to just support our athletes. I had to buy a wristband for both of us for the entire week, and I had to pay cash only. And I said, but I'm only here for 1 day.
They didn't want to spend the 3% to Visa or MasterCard?
Oh, they didn't want to pay the 10% to the tax.
To the government, exactly.
Well,
but here's the question that I always ask.
Because they do the credit card machines.
So Bronson goes
to cryptocurrency.
Let's say Bronson goes to whatever race. He's got to pay to park his motorhome. He's got to pay a premium if he gets hookups, right? So you've got that cost. Then he has a golf cart. He's got to have a sticker for that. So that's however a couple $100 for the week. If he has a pit bike, he has to have yet another sticker on that. Then he has to have the wristband for everybody that he has to pay for a transponder. He has to pay for his race entry. Like, where does it stop? And how does anybody justify, like, if you're telling
Coach,
me
how they justify it is as a business, you charge what you think you're worth. And if you have a bunch of people that are willing to pay it, then you can continue to keep getting away with it. So like, there might be an issue here, but theoretically it's not a problem.
If Bronson's paying $400 to race, and then he's going to pay for either a wrist as an entry for himself and his parents and his family, right? But then to stack on a parking fee, a camping fee, an extra vehicle fee, where the hell does it stop? There's no incremental cost for the facility to have motorhomes parked.
Yeah,
that's what I don't understand. If you're going to charge me for race entry, then Bronson should be able to pay for his race entry, get his race bracelet, and at least the vehicle he came in is covered as one. It's like, I guess they're learning from the government, right? Triple taxation. Fuck, I mean, where the hell does it stop?
I'll tell you what, Coach. I just want them to take some of that money they're collecting and run it on background checks so they can stop having sex offenders work at the track. Just saying.
Guys. Oh man,
pretty simple.
We're getting.
I'm a USMCA coach, and before I could even get into the program, I had to go through that safe sport certification first and foremost. It wasn't that difficult.
But MX Sports is going to have a guy renting golf carts with an extensive sexual record. It's pretty bad.
It just, everything stacks up, and I just don't understand is when we're talking about the entry point of
a lot of stuff. There's some things. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. It's just,
come on, dickhead.
Get him, Bronson. Get him.
Well, we talk about how we lower the threshold of entry into the sport. And we've got little kids that are playing football and baseball and hockey with the aspirations to go into the NHL, NBL, NFL. And then we look at the development program. If the entry of the bike is so damn expensive and you got to go through an area, you've got to go through a regional. When you go to the race, you got to pay for parking. You got to pay for a wrist entry. You got to pay to race, of course. You got to pay for transponders. And like Bronson's saying, you stack this on an area, stack this on a regional, stack this on Loretta's, stack this on 3 or 4 big races. You know, a lot of people don't realize that MX Sports owns a couple of the outdoor nationals. People don't even realize that, you know, and I'm sure they're not charging themselves for the entry or the upfront money that Chris exposed.
I will say this. Okay. So yes, we know that there's a problem. And again,
you asked how we fix it. I'm just going back to your original
how you
question.
Fix it is you stop giving to it for finallyfast.com. Dude, he is the biggest contributor to this channel. He says $52 for 52 likes. Got a dart before the end of the stream. Always epic conversation.
Thank you, brother.
Cooksey Mob. So thank you, finallyfast.com. See, Cooksey, people actually do like you, not the outliers, you know, that off air.
A couple people like
piece
me, not
of
many.
Shit.
It's just your boy Davey.
Okay. All right. My whole loop lost my train of thought here.
Oh, do you have a Racer X shirt, Johnny? Is that it? Are you gonna be putting articles over there?
Guys, I'm literally
I'm kidding.
Saying,
I'm giving you crap.
As
Sorry.
opposed to bitching so much. What do you do to fix it? Well, you stop giving them money and will see it in their bottom line that then they have to go do something else. Like literally, we've been trying for so long to potentially do something. And yes, I do see an uptick in privateers starting to speak up and everything, which is great. And I will say, I will give back to the sport that they could easily demonetize all sorts of content like they used to, but they're not taking down a lot of stuff. They're allowing some of the riders able to market themselves in a way that they can be independent contractors and try to gain more sponsors and that sort of thing. They're not locking everything down like they used to. They're becoming less strict on that certain stuff. So,
and Johnny, let me play devil's advocate.
Johnny, I think I'm going to puke.
Johnny, you're 13 or 14 years old. How old were you when you got your first motorcycle?
My brain.
I know, right? Sorry, Johnny.
How old were you, Johnny?
How I was 3.
Okay. So when did you realize you were fast and you really wanted to get on the scene as an amateur? On an 85, how old would you have been?
I was 12.
Okay. So you just heard Bronson say that there's nothing like experiencing Loretta's. He even said it himself. You've got to go at least once. So you're telling me you're now 12 years old and you're a badass on a bike, right? You did what Bronson did. You tripled in. You're the shit. And you've got a group of talking puppets, the 3 of us, that says, you know what, just go ahead and shelf that because we're going to go ahead and fight the system that monopolizes the entire amateur racing venue. And once it all shuffles out and enough people pull the money out of the system, it'll readjust. And now you're 32 years old pushing your little one around on a stroller going, well, fuck, I just lost my opportunity to go race. That's what it's going to take. And the system knows it because the casting net is so far out. You've got a series of tracks that represent the areas.
Okay, so
everybody
Coach,
jokes about it.
What do you
Johnny, my thing is you say all we do is talk. Of course, well, I'm media.
Well, that's
what
what influencers, content creators do. Is like you have to become aware before you can change. You cannot change until you become aware. That's
correct.
And
my job is that first spark is just to get it out there, put pressure. You can't change it if you don't know what the hell's wrong.
But Johnny, you would have to get 25 to 30 or 40 amateur tracks that refuse to buy into the existing system that would need to be funded because they're going to get blackballed. And the selling point to becoming an area or a regional is as soon as you sign that dotted line, people are going to come practice at this track because Bronson wants to stamp his card into Loretta's. That's the selling tool.
But guys, my point is it's almost like a conversation that's not worth having because things, in my opinion, right? I could get a lot of smack from this, but if things are not going to change and you're dealing with an individual, whatever you're talking about, politics or blah, 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 you're not going to change the ideology. You're not going to get it to change. So why not? Is it better spent to use use your breath and your experience and your time more wisely to go support other venues that are able and willing to have sort of the same ideology as you? Like, for instance, the arena cross guys, the world supercross guys, they are seeing stuff differently. So it makes sense to try to help build them up than to try to tear down somebody else where your efforts just are almost futile. Right?
I totally agree, Johnny. And that's why I've got with you and we have pushed the World Supercross and listen, they need some work over there, but I'm begging people to give them a shot, give them a chance.
Same thing with arena cross. And guys, again, yes, there's definitely some faults in American motocross and supercross. However, we have seen some change from them. We have seen a lot of change. Yes, the series is too long. Yes, everything's more expensive, right? But there is some decent things with the purse being more expensive and hopefully we can see a stock class enter. And I don't know. I am seeing more of a positive for a potential. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt on stuff. That's what I'm saying, because I don't see a whole lot of change happening as far as entry fees, things of that nature, but you are being able to make more money. And I think that is a good segue to the whole 2-stroke $25,000 thing, which I think Moto Memes ended up starting, and that might end up being a staple to Washougal. And how cool is it that the series is allowing outside money able to participate? They could easily have said, no, we are not going to give a 2-stroke guys extra purse because this makes us look bad because they're literally going to make more money than what we're willing to pay the dude that wins the race. Like from a marketing perspective, that's kind of shooting yourself in the foot, but they're at least saying, hey, if you want to give the riders money, you're able to do it. And there is plenty of guys here that are $500 for last place.
You're literally congratulating them. You patting them on the back for letting someone else pay more than they pay. Really?
I can't believe you just said it. I'm totally blown away that they are allowed to contribute to the financial advancement of the guys.
Guys, okay. You know,
in the world of social media, Johnny,
what could they have done, right?
In the world of social media, motorsport could do their own thing. They could do it on their own social media platform. They just get the final results and say, hey, look, I'm going to send Bronson a check for $5,800 because he was top two-stroke. You don't need the permission of the promoters to be able to promote. Johnny, what is it? I can never remember where you could go in and I can contribute money to a particular rider at Arena Cross.
Yeah, it's called Motivate. It's called Motivate. And
Motivate.
That's
right?
what I was
What's
just
the difference
to this is it's there. See, we're getting to a lot of semantics here, and there is politics in this, right? And you have to play ball with the governing body a little bit in order for something to do this. And without promotion, propaganda is how you influence people. And if you're not willing to, if you're getting shut down because you're getting blackballed like Brennan was at Loretta, you're not going to be able to be heard because you're going to be shut. So there is a little give and take here in order to, like, what are the sayings as far as like, the who is my enemy is also my friend, right? In order to try to get something done, you have to play ball to a certain extent with the stuff. You don't have to like it, but in order to, I'm just saying maybe there's a little bit more of an ego going on with just trying to choose the negatives versus some of the positives. Like, dude, guys, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you because I lived it and how hard it is, and the purse sucks and it's hard for the tracks, you know, like it's expensive for all that stuff. However, perhaps it's okay to take a little step back and see a little bit, take a little win every once in a while, as opposed to just the constant bird poopy.
Yeah. Well, and I think like most people
know. And I see Robb and Coach.
Hey, let Bronson
Robb and
talk.
Cooksey are very
let Bronson talk, Johnny.
Sorry, Bronson.
You no, I was just gonna say, like, I don't know. Most people, like, if they're racing and they're in it for the money, they're in it for the wrong thing, in my opinion. Like, I'm not in it for the money. You know I'm not going to become rich off this. You know, I'm doing it because I can. You know, because people are willing to help me, and I can not afford it, but I can get by doing it. You know, and that I think that's the like reality. Some people like maybe haven't found yet. They think that they're dumping all this money and they're going to be like Tomac, and it's like, you know, you're probably not going to be, you know, not being a dickhead, you know, but it's just, it's the truth, you know. It's like, yeah, when I was a little kid, I want to be like Tomac too. But then when you get older, it's like, wow, there's like 1,000 more kids better than me that also want to be like Tomac, you know? So it's kind of like, I'm not in it for the money. And I think most people aren't, you know, I would like to think, but I think if they are, I think they're definitely in it for the wrong reason.
Well, Bronson, if someone's in this sport for money, they're in the wrong sport. But the problem is there is money in. Hold on, Johnny. Let me finish my statement. And like, so the sport has money in it. It doesn't mean that you can just exploit guys who are okay just accepting it and riding for the love of it. If there's a giant potload of money and the promoters can just take it because guys like Bronson are willing to race for free, that's not okay. While it's happening, it's still not okay. And they need people like us to get out there and say, no. If you're this good, if you want to be a true professional sport and survive on anything other than just sponsor money, you have to have an actual league that contributes back to the competitors. Every successful league, soccer, football, basketball, they all contribute back. F1, they all contribute back to the teams. This one, they say, oh, it won't grow. It's niche. No, it's not. It's a broken business model.
It's a broken business model for anybody except for 4 or 5 people.
Correct.
That's it.
Correct.
Hey, Bronson, real quick, 2 years ago, what class were you in at Loretta's? Just 2 years ago.
That would have been, I think B class.
Think about
Wait.
this, guys. 2 years ago, Bronson was racing in the B class. And this summer, he's racing against Tomac, Sexton, Jet, Anderson. Okay. So when you look at what the amateur development program is supposed to do, now where's the money that's supposed to come along with that? If you're a top collegiate player and you get signed into Major League Baseball, even at a AAA level, right? There's a signing bonus and there's a base salary. Then you might be living out of a bus, you kill it, and then you finally get into a AAA type of contract. You see the gap 2 years ago? Both of you guys have talked about the fact that Deegan was racing in the super mini class just 2-3 years ago. And now look at him. He had the red plate last weekend as a pro. And stop and think about this. And Chris, you're going to cringe when I bring this name up. So stick with me just on the example, not who it is.
Thank God
go
we're going
back-
to get somebody else with some pressure here. Stock class would fix this, but go, coach.
So if you go back, I don't know, I would say 15 years ago when Kevin Walker was racing at Loretta's, and then I'm going to use, I think it was Pro Sport or A class or whatever, right? At that time, when all those big guys came out, and I don't remember who he was lined up against, but it was a lot of the big heavy hitters. All the guys came out of Loretta's, they went pro. Kevin Walker had a van, he had 2 bikes, and he would work in a dealership all week long. He would race Saturday, he'd get a ton of contingency money, drive all night, race on Sunday, get more contingency money. He told me he was making more money on contingency racing as an amateur on his immediate region than he would have made if he was a pro getting a salary and all that goes with it.
Coach,
So you
that-
look at
Matt Ferguson, I appreciate you giving 10% for the likes. You did not have to do that. We the whole show appreciates the donation.
Coach,
and talking about capitalism, effing YouTube takes 30% of this bullshit because they are offering the platform. So therefore they can kind of dictate the prices.
it's called a monopoly, Johnny. See a theme to today's theme?
Yes.
Coach, that was my whole point of the video is when you change from amateur racing to pro racing, the only thing that changes is the competition gets a lot harder. You're still paying the same.
That's what I was trying to reinforce on your video. Yeah. When you look at just literally 2 years ago, Bronson's battling in the B class. And who were the top 3 guys outside of yourself, Bronson, 2 years ago, excuse me?
Shoot, maybe Volan. I think Volan was in there. Thrasher. Yeah, I can't really remember most of them.
Because it's amazing to me. I've been to Loretta's the last 15, 16 years. And remember when Yenser was the guy at Loretta's. And then, yeah, you see his name trickling on the board, but he's not factory. He's not killing it. You look at a lot of the guys that came out of this so-called development program, to your point, Chris, about the Loretta's being the stepping stone that should catapult you into the pro ranks. If anything, it's like jumping off the end of a cliff. When you've got
what
guys
has been killing the sport has been the production rule. If we're being honest, okay, because the production rule was to allow the privateers and other people to race professionally, where you could just buy a showroom bike and race. But then there's been people that have been cheating, whatever, have better resources, blah, 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 teams that make such an unfair advantage to where they become the outliers. And the production rule is really moot point at this point. It's been exploited is what it's happened. And that's happened in the amateurs. If you want your kid to get a ride or blah, 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 you go out there with a $15,000 50 that is so far from stock. It's ridiculous. Okay. That is the underlying problem in the whole amateur to professional thing. And it just progressively gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So if we're talking about a solution, the solution is literally having a stock class that is reinforced from 50s to 65s to 80s to 250Fs to the pro class. And then you'll have—
When you say reinforced, are you talking about the rules, Johnny?
Yes, I'm literally talking about like an outside governing body that is not controlled, that's not controlling the narrative and also the promotion, just sort of what UFC is doing a little bit. And then come to the professional ranks, you have the stock class where is still the production rule. So anybody that didn't have the money to race amateur, whatever, they can, if they're fast enough, they can do it. And then you literally have the Premier League, which is like an F1 that has killed the privateers. The only way of entry is if you're on a factory level team. You're talking Honda, Yamaha, whatever. It's the cream of the crop. That's where all the money is. That's where things are spent. That's how I would foresee fixing the deal. But there's so much that has to happen in the intermittent part to make that a reality that I almost feel like it's a battle that you shouldn't even try to fight. We should just go put our help into the other series to potentially try to make a living, because Bronson's over here, 20 years old. That is a badass 1%er. And he's sitting here saying that racing motorcycles to him is not for the money. And that's fucking ridiculous. You're 20. You're almost in your prime. You know, I would say 26 to 30 is probably going to be his prime. But he's in his prime earning years for retirement and everything. Like, he should be building a career, which he is. But how do you switch the mindset to be thinking that you're not doing this for free?
Johnny,
Because Johnny, go ahead, Chris.
You missed such a key point. Apparently, according to Carmichael, factory bikes are at a disadvantage to privateer bikes. So,
Johnny,
I love the quotations with it here. Yeah, we heard,
Johnny,
we heard all of Bubba and them saying that, and their experiences are different. We're sitting here with Bronson, who's somebody that's lived it. He's not some kid that had the cream of the crop stuff growing up. Like, it is just,
but Johnny, you're
one
missing
side of the fence versus the other.
You're talking, and I'm with you, and we've talked about this off the record. We don't want to be perceived as people that are just on a witch hunt and complaining. Like you said, we always want to try to create awareness first, and then try to create a blueprint for change. As you just said, production rule, run what you brung factory. Think about this. The amateur market is where all the money is at. You've got kids from 50s all the way up to the vet class. You've got areas, and you've got regionals, you've got motocross, you've got off-road. Shitload of money. Venues have to pay to be on the series. Shitload of money. Sponsorship revenue. Shitload of money. Then you jump over onto the pro side, and then you take the money from the top, TV money. You make the tracks pay all the money, right? Now you look at the pro person, the payout of which the track has to pay. So on the coming up side, all the money is taken away. The guys go pro, and now the pros are, and you guys brought this up in your video, the pros have to pay to race, which, like Chris said in his last video, which is ludicrous. No other sport requires the people that fill the stadiums to pay.
That to happen.
But that's what I was going to say, Johnny. If you're going to bring in your production rule, which the model makes plenty of sense, the money's being made on the way up, then the money's being taken once they get to the top, because the people who fill the stadium have to pay to race. They're told everything they're not allowed to do with their GoPros and their social media, and they can't do anything in the pits. So you think about it. It's being taken on the way up, and it's being taken at the top. There is no middle. There literally is no middle grounds. So for you to do the production rule, I've had the privilege of talking with Jeff Ward about this. When you're in an IRL car, so let's say that you want to go with one of the top race car teams that are out there, right? You have to bring $3-4 million to the table to get a spot in the car. The team owner will provide you the car, the motor, the team, but you have to bring the funding to go racing. Just like you said with Formula One. I mean, if you watch the Netflix behind the scenes, what's the majority of the storyline? Raising money, retaining sponsors. I mean, hell, they even talked about they replaced drivers because the driver had either the right last name or had good affiliations that brought money to the team. So the rider got bounced for the guy who had the money, not that he was a better driver. He brought money that kept the team sustained for 2 or 3 more years. We're not bitching about, we know what it is, but if the 4 of us want to start 4 different tracks, we're handcuffed. And then you talk about, the arena cross, all they've got to do is kind of dodge the calendar because they're building unique venues at locations that don't have to argue with a governing body that says, hey, if you do another race series, we're going to drop you.
Hey, side note, Bronson, do you think this is the weekend that Jet loses a moto?
No.
Really?
Unfortunately, I don't.
Okay,
He's
yeah.
too good, man. He's just too good.
Do you
Like,
think
it's
he's ever going to
boring.
lose a
It's
moto
boring.
this year?
This year,
Just say no. Just say no.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well,
Unless his bike goes, I don't think it's going to be a rider error.
is Carson Brown going to be the top two-stroke?
I would like to think so. I don't know who else would beat him.
Johnny, you got anyone that could beat him? I know Moran. Isn't Moran's doing it?
Yeah, Carson Brown's pretty good.
Jerry Robin.
I'm having a brain fart.
Jerry Robin.
Who's the freestyle
Jerry
guy for
Robin
Cal?
wins the 25 grand or 20 grand, whatever it is. You say right here, Jerry Robin does it.
Yeah, Jerry might be. Yeah, between those two, it's between those two for sure. But yeah, I don't think anybody else is.
Lesher might be close, in my opinion. He might be close. Matt,
Rod Bell, maybe.
Sorry, say again, Bronson.
Rod Bell. I know Rod Bell's pretty good. I don't.
Johnny,
think
do you have a list of who's going to race two strokes?
I can try to look it up just off from what I've scoured on the deal. And Bronson, here in a nice fun light, you're the one in the mix of it all. Okay, we have a few very different views here. What is the thing that keeps you racing as far as like a positive note? What is the thing that keeps you going at this? Because risk versus reward, we kind of know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's just like an addiction, you know. Like, yeah, I mean, just being able to do it, and I don't know. Like, it's hard to say. Like, yeah, it sucks getting hurt, but it's like, not once have I got hurt, and I'm like, yeah, I'm done racing. You know, it's like, and never think of that. Like, and if I have, like, that's just when I'm in the pain, you know, and I'm in the. But, you know, right, you know, a month later, week later, it's like, yeah, that was stupid. Why was I thinking that, you know? And yeah, sure shit, I'm back on the bike, you know, every time. And I don't know, it's just an addiction. It's like it's something you do and you can't quit, you know. It's like I've thought about like, oh man, like I would be way better off, you know, going to college and you know, getting a job, making money. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. You know, it's like I'm still young and I still have, you know, I could always go back to school, or I could always, you know, get a job tomorrow, you know. So I'm going to use these younger years of my life. And if I have people support me to do it, I'm just going to keep doing it, you know, and it's like, I don't regret anything, you know. I don't want to be 30 years old or 40 years old and say, man, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that when I had the opportunity. I'm going to do all of it now. So when I'm older and I'm done and there's no regrets. I did everything I wanted to do. And then you
miss
move
every
on.
shot that you don't take.
Yeah, exactly. You know, even
Johnny,
if you miss,
think about,
who cares?
Johnny, think about how many women you've talked to that went through childbirth and they said that was the most painful thing they ever did. And then they have 2 more children. You know, it's just one of those things. Once, like the chat room is saying here, it's that adrenaline fix. Johnny, you've talked extensively about it. Chris, you have as well in your videos. It's once you jump on a bike and you twist the throttle for the first time at 3, 5, 7, whenever that first time is, it just can never be replaced with anything under the sun.
But it is interesting to hear Bronson say the addiction here, because this is kind of a funny analogy that like MX Sports and everything, they're like the drug dealers. And so they've got everybody because everyone's addicted to it. So they're going to keep coming back. And, you know, it's kind of a shitty analogy, but it's also the...
Hey, what a great race to go to this weekend. Can you imagine the smell and the sounds if you've got 15, 20 of the bikes out there or 2 strokes? This is like the race to go to, man. Because you listen, I love it when you're at, I don't get the chance to go to many Supercrosses nowadays because my schedule is so busy. But I love it when you're on TV and the commentators are talking and you can hear that unique 2-stroke in the background as it goes by. You're like, oh, there it is. You know, you can tell where that 2 strokes on the track the whole time. I would love to go to Washougal and just listen and smell that on the starting gate of that race fuel, that 2-stroke. Oh man, running some Blendzall, just that crisp, super smell. I love it.
Well,
who do you think is going to win? Sorry, I'm trying to show the list here because you were asking for it. It's not going to be incredibly accurate, but Marchbanks is signed up on a 250. It says YZ250F, but I'm assuming that's just a 2-stroke here. And then you've got Carson Brown also on a 250. You've got Justin Rodbell on a 250. You got Jeremy Hand on a 250.
Yeah,
you have Anthony Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
You have Jerry Robbins, however, he's listed for a 450 here. You got Burkeen, You got Lesher.
Well, we know Lesher's bike will be good based on who we've had on the show before.
Yeah,
Chris,
Brandon
I find
Ray.
it ironic that Marchbanks would run a 2-stroke.
I
don't know if
surprised.
he
I
is.
don't know. So
Yeah, I don't know.
I find it hard to believe that Club would build a 2-stroke.
Yeah, I
Josh
don't think- I don't
McBride.
think
I
he
mean,
is.
that's literally what it says here. As it says,
No, I know
Yamaha
what you're saying.
YZ250F.
No, I'm not arguing with you, boss.
Long,
I'm just
big
saying
250F.
it took forever for them to listen to Chris and put him on a 450. Finally, I find it odd they put him on a 2-stroke 250.
Well, yeah, and another thing is he was supposed to do the whole series on 250s, and I know when they sign up, they just sign up for the whole series. So when he switched to the 450s, they probably just switched his name over with his sign up already as a 250.
good point. I wouldn't trust that.
I wouldn't trust that.
Yeah, I
either.
know, but whose job is it? Professional sport here. Whose job is it to make sure that you've got accurate information on here, right? Like,
Well,
mine's
you guys know I like JT Money. I think he's the bomb, and he's even said it on his show that they've talked to the people and they're like the governing body says like we can't edit the names in the system. I mean, they have people that are listed racing that aren't even at the races sometimes because they're pulling an old number or whatever. So JT Money even said he's pulling his hair out. Like, how can we in 2023 not be able to update it? And he goes and talks to him. They're like, we just cannot update the system. And he's like, huh? No.
As of right now, the cutoff is 90 entries, but 87 have been going on here. So, Cooksey, before we let Bronson go, because I know I was saying about an hour, and we're now at an hour and 30. Who do you think is going to win this weekend? And then who's going to win the buku money in the 250s?
I'm going to go with I'm going to start with the 2 strokes because that's kind of what everyone's paying attention to. Carson Brown. I don't see how that guy who's so talented at his home track. I don't know. I just watch him on Instagram and I feel like nobody on earth can go faster. He's just, I don't know. I think this is made for him. So Carson Brown on the 2-stroke, 450s. I think Jet's going to get the day win. I think Chase is going to sneak the first moto win. I got a gut feeling, but as the track gets rougher, that's when Jet's technique kind of comes into play and he can kind of drop Sexton. But when it's smoother earlier, Chase's who's Chet? Talking like Hopper. Chase's aggression is it's more dangerous to Jet. So yeah. So I'm picking Chet to win. No, and then
wrong, but
Justin Cooper.
Opinion.
Yeah, Justin Cooper in the 250s.
Yeah.
Okay. Bronson.
Yeah, I think
450, 250.
Man, I want Sexton to beat him. I do. Like, it's boring to watch Jet win, every moto. It's like not even worth watching. But I don't know. I just don't think it's going to happen. But I'm going to go Jet. I'm going to say it's just a no-brainer to go Jet for the overall win. I think he's going to go 1-1. 2 strokes? Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. Like, you think, Jerry Robbins, like a top 10 guy in the 450 class. You think put him on a 2-stroke, he'll still be up there. But then you have Carson Brown. That's like, it's his home track. He only rides 2 strokes. It's like, it's hard to bet against that guy, there at least, and then, 250 class. I don't know. I mean, I think Justin Cooper for sure is really good at Washougal, even, years past. So I'm going to go with J Coop this weekend for the win.
Okay. Rob? Coach?
In the 450 class, I'm going to go Jet. He spanks everybody. Sorry, Chris. I think he's going to be, his momentum right now is just second to none. His confidence is at an all-time high. And Johnny, the way you bring up the analysis of just the little things he does, I just think he's on a rampage right now. I still think it's going to be the same 3. I think it's going to go Sexton. It's going to go Jet. It'll go Sexton, and then it'll go Ferrandis, just because right now nobody else seems to be healthy enough to outdo Ferrandis. On the 250 side, I've got Hunter. I think once again we're seeing a healthy Hunter. He's very determined. I think he's going to put a big stamp on it. I do have J Coop shaking it up in second, and I have Shimoda third. And I don't want to regurgitate what Bronson has said, because it's so hard to go against Carson, especially. And I agree with that was what I was going to say. What Carson said, what Bronson said is he rides a two-stroke all the time. So he's just got that edge. He's got that flow. And the fact that it's his home track where, those little nuances of the track, it's going to be really hard to beat that combination. But because we've had him on the show before, I'm going to, just to go against what Bronson said, just to be different, I'm going to go with Lesher and HP Development. I think that's going to be somebody that'll be hard to beat.
Yeah, they're all good. I mean, they're all good. It sucks. It sucks. You got to pick one, because it's like
one winner.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Robbin, top 10 450 guy, Jared Lesher making mains, on a two-stroke. Carson Brown doesn't, he goes out and wins Red Bull Straight rhythm. It's like, dude, these guys are all good. It's like, it sucks. You got to pick one, but I don't know.
Yep.
It's just, you have to just make a decision and go with it.
That's it. Johnny, who you going with, boss?
Jet, obviously, then Sexton, then Anderson. 250s, I'm going to go Hunter, then Cooper, then Deegan. And for two-stroke, I want to say Robin. I want to say Robin and Carson. That's going to be a good battle. I think Robin's going to come out on top because there's nothing like racing as far as experience. So he's been doing it. He's got the intensity. He can deal with not having engine braking. In my opinion,
you've got Anderson in third on 450.
I do.
I like that pick, Johnny.
Guys. And does Jet go 1-1 or does he lose the first?
Of course,
moto
I got to bet
Sexton?
with Cooksey. He's got to go 1-1. That's what it's been foreseen. It's been written in history already. Yes. Jet has a perfect season, his first season in 450s. But guys, that'll do it for this episode of the Shit Show. Make sure you go follow all of these SOBs because their links are in the description. Bronson, really appreciate you having you on the show. Is there anybody you want to shout out? How can we help you? And then I'm going to ask you to bro up at the end.
Yeah, man. Appreciate having me on. No, that was cool. Yeah, shout out to, everybody helping me, everybody Rock River Yamaha, Bobby at Checkmate MX, Mike, my mechanic Travis, my mom and dad, everybody else, helping me out, man, helping me get to these races, man. It's cool. It's cool to be able to have the opportunity to do all this cool stuff and hopefully share it with everybody else when I'm done. So yeah.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, homie. It's been cool seeing you grow up and becoming a young man. So with that, I'm going to ask you to be a 2-year-old again. And everybody, let's brop, okay? Best two-star. Where's the end button?
Peace.
Awesome.
Okay,
Hopper.